It's about 24 hours before we're about to leave. We start getting intelligence updates that from 7 fighters, there's 8 fighters. 8 hours out, there's 13, 14, 15, and then we're about to insert and there's like 19 fighters on the ground now. ISIS opened up with everything that they had in that cave. I mean, it sounded like hell broke loose behind me. Like explosions, machine guns, small arms, everything. Like it was just wild. And I was like, holy crap. I'm not sure how, but they knew we were coming. My name is Nick Jones. I was a Marine Raider with MARSOC, so Marine Special Operations Command. I did 8 years at MARSOC and 12 total in the Marine Corps. Currently, I am the president and founder of Talon's Reach Foundation, living in Bozeman, Montana. I grew up in Olathe, Kansas, so city just outside of Kansas City. I was actually quite the troublemaker when I grew up. Barely graduated high school, and then this last time I got into some brawl. I got into a fight, and then I was on probation. I got arrested. I was walking out in handcuffs. I see my mom crying, my dad crying. My boss was mad at me because I was at work. I worked at a skateboard shop, and then I had a meeting set up with the recruiter, the Marine recruiter, the very next day. And I used my one phone call when I got to Juvie to call him and say, hey man, I screwed up. I got in trouble again. I'm gonna miss our meeting. And then he said, cool, well, I'll be at your house whenever you get out. So I got let out early on house arrest, and he showed up at my house, laid it all out like the recruiters do, and was just like, I'm here to help. Like, so if you're serious about this, let's get serious. And then next thing you know, I signed the papers and did all my community service with the Marine Corps recruiting station, got my shit together, and ended up going to boot camp in January of 2010. So as soon as I possibly could, I left because Kansas was not doing it for me. So I said, I need a change, and I'm gonna pull the trigger and go. I picked the Marine Corps because whenever I heard about the Marine Corps, they said that they're the most elite fighting force that there is. I believed every second of it. When I found out about MARSOC, I'm like, that's like the 1% of the 10% that actually want to work hard. Yeah, I ended up trying out and making it, and then once I made it there, it was just like, this is definitely what I envisioned the Marine Corps to be like. July 10th of 2017, our unit was sending guys out to Yuma, Arizona to do a close air support type of training package. So they were taking all of like the guys, the air controllers, the JTACs out there to conduct this training. I remember that morning actually saying goodbye to several of the dudes and giving them hugs before they head up to the airfield and take off. So they took a C-130 out of Cherry Point. When they were flying over Mississippi, there was a malfunction with the aircraft. One of the propellers basically fell off and split the fuselage in half. There were 16 Marines on board. All 16 of them perished in that accident. 7 of them were in hotel company. There were 6 Raiders and 1 SARC, so he's a Special Amphibious Reconnaissance Corpsman. So it was strange that day when I was working, going home, hanging out with the family. I saw something on my phone, like this news article come up about a plane crash over Mississippi, and I was like, I don't know anybody who would be over Mississippi right now, so I kind of just like brushed it off. And then later on that night, I get a phone call from my team chief, and he said, hey man, like, I don't know if you've heard yet, but there was a plane crash. My heart immediately dropped, and I was like, oh no. When he told me the names of the guys that were on there, he started spitting them off, and he's like, Talon was on there. We've looked through all the documentation, and Talon had you on his worksheet that he wants you to notify his wife. So we need you to get to battalion right now and get dressed up in your uniform and come over here, and then we'll fill you in on what to do. Crazy thing is, I actually didn't even have a uniform ready. Like, I was very much a field Marine. I didn't always get dressed up in uniform, and then once you make it to the special operations, it's like you very rarely get into a uniform unless you're checking into a formal school. So I called a friend who lived actually right next door to Talon, and I said, hey man, I don't have a uniform, this is what happened. I need to borrow your uniform. So I went over to his house. He's like, well, you're not gonna like this part. And he hands me the uniform. He's like, I don't have a uniform either. This is actually Talon's. I go back to the battalion. I do the read-in and then drive right back through the neighborhood and notify her. And that was by far the one of the hardest things I've had to do in my military career. Going to 7 funerals back to back, and we had to deploy 6 months later. So that was like my first experience towards like real trauma. I mean, it was a mass casualty too, so it was like, how do you deal with the loss of 7 guys? So the way to cope with that was just to drink more, or work harder, or be there longer. And from there, like every July 10th, we would remember them. We would do some sort of like really gnarly workout. We would always, you know, share a drink together and things like that. So I guess the biggest takeaway that I took from that was I didn't really conceptualize or think about the fact that we could lose dudes stateside. I really started to believe like, dude, anything can happen at any moment. Just take all of these moments, truly live there, truly be present, and focus on, you know, the moment that you have, because it could be all gone tomorrow. In 2020, we redeployed to northern Iraq. At this time, it was a very like politically sensitive area. Like there wasn't much going on as far as like large combat operations. ISIS was basically back down to an insurgency level. They were hiding in large cities in these little sleeper cells. The first couple missions that we would do over there, we would actually roll up some pretty high value targets that were huge like IED facilitators and things like that. And there was this one dude, Jabba the Hutt. Didn't really know why he was called Jabba the Hutt until we saw him. I mean, this dude was massive. Now that ISIS was back into that insurgency, like a lot of the things that we would do that were outside of the city were more of like trying to find them in these little villages. And we soon find out that they're hiding out in caves and tunnel systems and things like that just outside of these little villages. Teams before us had started to send some reports over that they were doing a lot of work in caves. March 8th of 2020, we were tasked with a large cave clearance operation. They had been watching this cave system for a couple weeks now. I've been watching them go in and out of caves, coordinating some way. There was a little village on the very bottom side of the mountain that they were in. It was actually our sister team that was tasked with this mission. Well, at the same time, COVID started. They were about to conduct this mission, and then they were like, hey man, our whole partner force is sick right now. So within 2 or 3 days, we conduct rehearsals, we conduct our planning, we take some of their plan and use it as ours. It's about 24 hours before we're about to leave. We start getting intelligence updates that, hey, now there's from 7 fighters, there's 8 fighters. We're 12 hours out, there's 12 fighters now. 8 hours out, there's 13, 14, 15, and then we're about to insert and there's like 19 fighters on the ground now. I'm not sure how, but they knew we were coming. They were all kitted up, they were all ready. We ended up sending in some ground elements, some snipers, along with some French commandos were with us. So they went and inserted several hours before we did. With me, I had probably 8 other US and then 26 Iraqis. As we insert, there was a part of the mission where they're gonna come strike it with CAS, so the close air support. They're gonna drop bombs on every cave entrance that they know of. So they had 7 different entrances that we knew of that they were gonna drop on. Depending on how deep they are in the cave, whether or not they're gonna kill the guys or the enemy fighters or not. A lot of the times it doesn't kill them because they know it's coming, they can hear them coming, so they go deeper in there and then they hide. We dropped, 12,000 pounds of bombs because there were 7 different caves. They dropped a couple 2,000 pounders, a couple 500 pounders. As we're moving up closer, we can still hear gunfire going on, we can still hear explosions going on, and then it kind of settles out. And like now, like this weird, eerie feeling just kind of fucking wipes the whole valley. There were some caves that had mounted machine guns up into the walls, so they had these like little like rat holes that they would go up and around and basically be able to mount these machine guns, so they would be looking straight down this valley into this mountain, and they'd be able to like mow us down if that's where we came from. But I just remember there was one cave that I was looking into. I was just staring at this dust-covered dead fighter. The kit he had on, he was fully loaded out. He had an M16 pretty much laying right next to him. There's an AK over here. Then there was a mounted machine gun in the wall with a bag of ammo. I just thought, like, man, if we would have planned this mission differently and we would have came up from the south side up through this valley, we would have been mowed down like in a second. And at this point, yeah, there was some like eerie feeling that I got. I could see multiple different caves that we hadn't seen through imaging or ISR. It was just odd. It just felt odd. Like there was more to this than what we are expecting right now. And at this point, other side of the assault force is getting a little bit antsy. They want to do more work. The team chief decides that he wants to go check out some other caves that he sees, because they're everywhere. They end up splitting off and they start clearing these other caves. And at this point, the support by fire guys, the other snipers that are up on the other side of the hilltops, they can no longer see that maneuver element. And so my guys, we keep working, we're setting in security up top, and we're making our way up to these other cave entrances. And that's when I come up on this one cave and I start to pick it apart. I throw a grenade in there before I pop my head up in there. And so I throw a grenade and it blows up. As soon as the smoke clears, I go up there and I look in, and that's when I see that dead ISIS fighter with covered in dust, looked completely white. As I'm about to enter into this cave with my partner force, the other maneuver element had found the cave that was down there at the bottom of the ravine. Initially, they called out a solar panel on top of there, and then they're like, hey, we're gonna go check this out. And as they got closer, they tried to like pie around it, basically. So a French commando went one way, and then a US guy went the other way. As soon as the French commando exposed himself, he was immediately shot. ISIS opened up with everything that they had in that cave. And I mean, it sounded like hell broke loose behind me. Like explosions, machine guns, small arms, everything. Like it was just wild. And I was like, holy crap. So they're calling in contact 5 meters, like super close contact. I'm like, it's okay, they've got it handled. They call in one casualty over the radio, which was the French casualty. I didn't know that at the time, but like, it's okay, they've got it under control. So I'm about to start working into this cave, and then next thing you know, I hear there's an Eagle down. An Eagle is a US service member. It's one of the ways that we deconflict on the ground, and like my heart immediately dropped, and I was like, holy crap. And then next thing you know, like not even a second later, there's another Eagle down. I was like, oh my God. So I basically turned to my partner force. I was like, hey, you guys watch this cave, do the work that you need to do in here. I've got to go. And I basically ran in the most untactical manner that I could up and over this other terrain feature. And like, as I'm going over there, there's other caves that are off to my left and right, and some of them have things in them. So like there was a pile of blankets and things like that in one of them. There was a bunch of trash and stuff in the other one. And I'm like, I don't know who's hiding in these things, but they're not friendly if they are. And I just shoot a couple rounds into both of them. And as I pass by and make it down to the cave, and there's just like chaos, just absolute chaos. I remember there was some Iraqis kind of just sitting there, like didn't know what to do. Dudes were frozen. I was just like, where's the casualties? What's going on? Nobody's really talking. So I'm like, well, there's gunfire happening in here. I'm just gonna jump in and see what's up. I'm trying to talk to him. I ask him like, where are the casualties? Where are the enemies at? And his gun's just fixated, pointed in the direction. And so I was like, well, that must be where they're at. So I'm gonna kind of climb up here and see. And as I climb up on top of this rock, I peek my head up, and like my nods and my helmet kind of get exposed, and then all of a sudden like start pinning me down with everything that they got. And I saw the cave, I saw the entrance of it. Like the mouth of this thing was the most intense looking bunker I've ever seen. Like the overhang from the top of this rock that they had, with all of these stacked rocks and murder holes everywhere, just like little holes that they could use as gun ports to poke their guns out and shoot. All of a sudden, like the fire is still happening, like gunfire is still happening, and these legs just fly up in the air. And I get this wild sensation that I need to run up there and grab this dude. So I chicken wing my gun and I put it under my shoulder as best I could, and I run up, and I'm emptying my mag into this cave, and as I'm running up there, I grab him with my right hand and I start yanking him down. and we're still getting shot at like crazy, and somehow neither of us got hit. And I pull him down and push him down on the rest of the rocks, and like I'm still shooting. I ended up having to reload right there, and I have another teammate yell at me from up top, and he's like, hey, like, what support do you need? I'm coming in. And I was like, dude, do not come in here right now. Like, somebody's gonna die. And now at this time, it's like, I still don't know where the 2 US casualties are, but I know that there are casualties. And I'm talking with the snipers that are supporting us, and they can see pretty much into the cave. They can see a few of the pockets that are in there. And I told them like, hey, like, just walk me up to the cave, and I want to try to identify like where the casualties are. Because it was hard to tell once you were like up on top of the actual cave, but there was this dead tree that they kind of walked me towards. As I approached the edge, that's when I see my first teammate. He was dead right in front of the cave. I get a little bit closer, and then I see my other teammate. The one teammate that was right in front of the mouth of the cave, I knew he was dead immediately, just by the way that he looked. The other guy, he kind of looked like he might still be alive, so I called his name several times, like whispered it, and then nothing. And so I went back, regained my composure, and kind of tried to come up with an idea. But that's when I called up to the commander. I said, hey sir, here's what's going on. Mo and Diego are dead. Everyone was shocked, because those two, Mo was the executive officer. So he was a captain at the time, but he was the executive officer of the company. Very high-ranking individual in a high-level position in the company. And then our team chief, so gunnery sergeant, who was like the highest enlisted in our team. I started coming up with these plans. It was like the only thing that I can think of is like, snipers, you guys need to cover me with precision fires, and I'm gonna go in there and I'm gonna try to chuck some grenades and maybe get a lull in the fight so I can jump down there and get them. I've been put into some weird, complex situations in training and some other things in combat, but I've never really been at the moment where I was like, I don't know what to do. And that was one of those moments. I looked around and I was like, this dude's got kids, this guy's married with kids, this dude's young, like just started his career. Like, if I tell him to go get security for me down there, or tell him to move this way, like, they're gonna die. If I jump down here, I'm gonna die. Like, I don't know what to do. For a moment there, I was fighting with only probably 4 other US dudes that were down there, until we had some other guys show up to help out. So for maybe an hour or two, it was just me and a couple other US guys and some French guys. But it was at that moment when I pulled back, I looked behind me and I have more US guys there. And I was like, okay, like, we've got some more support, but what I'm doing isn't working. So I called up to the commander. I said, hey, like, I need the Apaches to come in and threat a hellfire in here. The JTAC, there was one up on top of the hill. He's like, I don't have enough SA. I need you to do this. So I was like, okay. And he's like, I need a 10-digit grid. I need this and this. And so I basically was talking with the aircraft, and I said, hey, here's your grid. And I stood right on top of the cave, and I read off the 10-digit grid from my GPS, and I said, I am standing on the cave, do you see me? And basically, like, and there's still gunfire going on and things like that, and I was like, this is where you need to shoot. Their cave is right below my feet. They shoot 220 30mm grenades in there, basically, and there's zero effect. I need something bigger. They saw how close I was. They could still see me. They could still see a couple other US guys out there, and they're like, I need you to move. You need to go up and over this thing. I was like, dude, I have very little or maybe no water at this point. I'm super tired. I'm low on ammo. Just shoot the fucking thing. I'm not moving. And he's like, okay, just get low then. Get as low as you can. So it's like, okay. Yeah, that was probably, that was pretty terrifying, honestly. The Apache was pretty dang close and flying up over this mountain, and I'm looking at that, and then when I see it, it like looks like it's coming towards me because I'm so close. And then when it hits the cave, like the snipers immediately say like, no effect. So I asked the guys up there, I was like, shoot some Carl G's in there. We've got some anti-structural munitions that would work really well on these caves, because those were the grenades that I was using, these ASM grenades. They shoot 2 ASMs, anti-structural munitions in there, and then an HEDP round, high explosive dual penetration. One kind of exploded, the other 2 dudded. So those were not effective. Now I have a lot more US dudes with me. I said, okay, well, let's all get online. We're getting shot at from multiple different directions, so I need you guys to cover all of these different caves on the other side of the mountain, you guys to shoot the cave that's directly across from us, and then I'm gonna go in there and I'm gonna throw some more grenades and I'm gonna get a lull in the fight and I'm gonna jump down there and get them. We spread out along the side of the mountain and we all start pushing up online, and at that point, an Apache was just flying over us and he had just like released some flares. And I basically used that. I was like, all right, that's our cue. So we start suppressing and we're moving up, and I throw 2 grenades at this point. And as I like make it up there, I'm like starting to get the confidence. And then as I step onto the very edge of the cave, I ended up getting hit with a baseball bat. Just whack. I was like, oh my God, what was that? And I like immediately like get down as low as I can, and I crawl back off the top of the cave and I look at my leg and there's some blood trickling down. And I was like, oh no. I get up to my medic finally. I was like, hey man, like I think I just got shot. And he's like, what do you mean you think you got shot? And so like pull up my pant leg and it's already super swollen and just like trickling blood. And he's like, yeah, sure as shit. At that point, I kind of talked to the medic. I was like, hey dude, don't call a medevac. Don't tell them anything. Don't tell the commander yet. Like we still got work to do. Let's see if we can do this. A little bit of time goes by. The pain starts getting worse. The fight is still going and I can't push anymore. So I don't have any more grenades. I hardly had any ammo left. We were just wiped. I mean, we had been fighting for 6 hours at this point. I mean, on some steep, really rugged mountain terrain. As I'm trying to move, like they wanted to put me on a stretcher and I said, no, I'm not. Like just make a shield around me, basically like a little diamond around me and cover me. But like, I'm gonna hold my gun. I'm gonna walk up this thing because the last thing I need to do is take multiple guns out of the fight because we're still fighting. We finally get to the top of the ridge and the medic comes up to me and he's like, man, take the lollipop. He's like, we already called in the 9 line. The commander knows you're going home. Immediately had this like sense of failure. Because I mean, from the start, I helped plan the whole tactical side. I helped come up with it. I conducted the rehearsals. I did all of that stuff. Like the team was relying on me to do this. And then when I took control to take these, like to recover our guys, like that was supposed to be me to pull them out. Like I was supposed to do that. That's what I thought, you know. And I was supposed to keep everybody safe, and it didn't happen. And I wanted to make sure everybody got brought home. My recovery was very long. The round severed my superficial peroneal nerve, which is one of the main sensory nerves in your leg. Developed a symptom called complex regional pain syndrome in my leg almost immediately. This symptom basically takes over the sympathetic nervous system and just goes haywire. And so they would cause like swelling and discoloration and pain. And so the surgeon wanted to do reconstructive surgery to try to make everything as normal as possible, reconstruct the anatomy so then my body didn't think it was going crazy anymore. So they used cadaver nerves on the 2 sections of the nerve that was all jacked up. My body did not like that at all. Completely rejected it. My leg swelled twice the size of normal, maybe 3 times. I don't know, it was pretty gross. That surgery didn't work, so they tried to do an external stimulator that was a wire that went in through my leg, and this battery was like glued to the side of my thigh. That was a 60-day thing, didn't work. I think it made things worse, honestly. So they pulled that out. I had this surgery done 3 times, but I got to the point where I couldn't do much. Like I couldn't wear a backpack, I couldn't wear a belt, I couldn't wear normal pants or normal boxers. Like everything, the compression around my back hurt so bad. So I started to talk to my surgeon more and I said, hey man, like my leg hurts more than it has. My back hurts really bad. I need to get this stimulator out and I want you to cut my leg off. And he's like, no, I've got this option. You're not going to lose motor function. We're going to do 2 different amputations of a smaller nerve down by your ankle, because that's what was causing a lot of pain for my foot, and then one up like right behind your knee. I was leaving on July 10th, flying out of the Bozeman airport, so my surgery was scheduled for July 12th. I'm in the airport, and what I do in normal fashion of anniversaries, so July 10th was the 5-year anniversary of the plane crash, so I'm sitting there drinking a beer, honoring the guys, and then I get a phone call from back home that my best friend Zach had just died. And I mean, like, we grew up together. We did all our mischievous stuff together. He was my neighbor for the longest time. Like, him and I were best friends. But like, of all days, July 10th, I kind of lost my mind in the airport. I started crying right there, and the lady had just put the second beer in front of me, and I was like, I can see this going one of 2 ways. I'm gonna pick this up, and I'm just gonna keep going down the rabbit hole of drinking and spiraling down. I'm about to go get this other surgery. Who knows if it's gonna work? I was freaking out. So I took a drink. I said, this is for you, Zach. Now I'm done. So to date, I still haven't had a drink. I've been sober for 1 year and 5 months, but I went in and got that surgery and said, this is it. Like, I'm gonna come out of this. I'm gonna feel so much better. I'm gonna do everything that I love to do. 3 weeks after that surgery, like, I ditched all the canes and the walkers and everything, and I was basically like trotting through the mountains and starting to move around more. On the year mark, the 1 year later, I picked the highest peak that I could see out of the back of my house, and I said, I'm gonna run up there today. So July 10th, I ran up to this peak called Sacagawea Peak. I did 4,300 feet elevation gain, and then about 12.5 miles, and I tried to run most of it. I went from one extreme to not being able to wear a damn belt to, like, I'm not letting this shit ruin my life. Some final words that I'll leave out there is, you know, it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter what you've done, it doesn't matter your rank or your billet. You always have a team standing by to help you, to support you. In today's day and age, we tend to want to hold all of this stuff in. If you don't say anything, nobody's going to be there to help you. And it's something that I've learned the hard way for myself. So there's no reason to do this alone.